The True Project presents.
Hi, and welcome to the True Project. My name is Oaklee Thiele, and I'm here interviewing the Comedians with Disabilities Act. Thank you so much for being here, guys. So if you don't mind, can you please introduce yourselves, where you're from, what you do?
Hi, my name is Nina G, and I'm a stand up comedian and author of the books Stutter Interrupted, and I'm from Oakland, California.
My name's I go by the stage name Mean Dave. I'm a comedian. Pretty much that's my full-time job for the last 3 years, and I'm from space. I'm kidding. I'm from I'm grew up. I live in where I grew up, Newark, California, in the East Bay.
And my name is Michael Beers. I'm from Missoula, Montana, where I grew up, and I'm also a stand-up comedian, and I also work at a independent living center here in Montana, working in the community center you see behind you. So.
How did you guys decide to go into comedy?
I've been a comedy fan all my life. Recently, I was reflecting on it, and I've loved comedy longer than I've stuttered, longer than I've known that I have dyslexia. So it's something that's been my whole life. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a stand-up comic. I would call up open mics. I would write material, and I would find out if the open mics allowed minors. So I was ready to go on stage, but I never did. And I never did because I didn't think someone who stuttered could be a stand-up comic. This was pre-internet, so I couldn't type in where the stuttering stand-up comics were. And so dream died. And then I started doing comedy when I was 36, and it's been 10 years. And just I went to a conference for people who stutter, and I realized how much I was holding myself back and kind of being reflected by other people who stutter, especially women. And I came back from the conference. I was like, I want to be more engaged in my life, and I want to do the things that I want to do, and I don't want to have that be something, have my speech be something that has stopped me to do things. And it had a lot to do with relationships too. So I changed my life, and I overhauled it, and I started doing comedy in 2010.
Nice.
But I grew up. I was raised on stand-up comedy. My parents were really into it, and so I found I had a great love of it as a fan. Just I memorized comedy specials without realizing it and stuff like that, and they were always heavily influencing on my life and even in my music and stuff, as far as just having a sense of humor. And I didn't realize it, but one of the things I did enjoy was doing things to get a laugh. And also I just found that people laughed at me naturally, not with me, but at me. I really got into it more out of resentment, because everybody I saw at the time I started, I thought was horrible. And I could see that they were getting booked and stuff. Nina knows, because I met her at the time, and it was 2010. And I just was like, okay, I'm not trying to be a comedian, but I know I can be better than these people. Felt like I felt more at home in this land of the misfit toys of these very damaged personalities, who weren't funny, and some were funny, but there is a universal kind of thread of humor that goes through it all. So, and then through comedy I found recovery, and with recovery I learned that I'm a recovering drug addict, and that is covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, as I learned through Nina. So all this stuff comes full circle. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay. So you guys are part of a group called Comedians with Disabilities Act. How did this form? Like, who started this? Can you tell me a little bit about the history of your group?
So Michael O'Connell started it years ago, and he was a comedian who used a wheelchair. He has since passed away, but he was really the heart of the group. And he originally performed with Steve Danner and Eric Me, and they did a few shows, and then I caught wind of this, and I was like, you need a woman with a non-apparent disability in the group, because Steve is a little and Eric's blind. Um, and so they were like, okay. And I did a guest set, and it worked out really, really well. Michael, after he died, his mom was like, I really want the name to go on. I really want the group to go on. And I'm very thankful that I found the group, because it really helped to develop my own voice as a comic and as a disability activist. I think in comedy, there can be a tendency of some people doing jokes in comedy to make other people comfortable, and I think that's not what I want to do. I want to make people uncomfortable, because a lot of times, like, the jokes are self-deprecating to make the audience comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, I thought of that about that person, and now they're saying it, and that makes me feel better. I want to do the opposite of that, and to kind of challenge how they to think about it. And this group really helped me to develop that. And now with Michael and Dave, I think it brings a different perspective into this. And especially Dave being someone who is in recovery, not a lot of people know that that's covered under the ADA, whether in the recovery world or in the disability world. So when we do shows, we bring those perspectives, and it's been really great.
Okay, so I don't know how much Nina has told you about me, but I have a service dog. And when we're like out in public, there's people will like point at us and yell at us and like stare at us. Like, I feel like I'm like a zoo animal. Like, oh, it's awful. But I feel like my disability is almost on display and that they're judging me. How does it feel being a disabled comedian up on stage? Like, is it empowering or is it more scary? Like, I feel like if I was going to go up on stage, that my disability would just be on display almost. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. So, for me, getting up on stage, I was talking about is the first time I felt 100% like myself for the first time. I like a lot of young people with disabilities, apparent and non-apparent. Um, my school career was spent really being a student of other people than it was being a student of myself, or certainly my subjects, because I did not I did not want to be a part of this club. And I think that's something unique as a minority group that we, especially when we're younger or newly acquired, uh, we don't necessarily find comfort in our community. So I was, trying to emulate everybody else. But when I stepped on stage as me, I was taller and louder than everybody in the room, and I felt an instant wave of comfort. I still get very nervous before shows and before interviews like this. But once I'm in it, whether it's going good or bad, there is a sense of place there.
I've gotten up in the face, like once I was at an open mic and a woman wouldn't look at me. She was like this, and she was right there in the front row, and it wasn't a stage. So I got up in her face and I stuttered in her face, and she laughed, and it broke the tension there. So like I enjoy that process, and I feel very fortunate to have a place where I can shape how people think about my stutter.
This society, we all know the society is built for able people with able minds. Have you guys experienced any sort of issues with accessibility or ableism or discrimination while you're traveling or performing for your shows?
I know for me, and this was an interesting thing about the core group of the guys who were the original comedians with Disabilities Act, is that we would do a show. People would think that I was fake stuttering. They thought that Michael was faking being in a wheelchair, and Eric was fake being blind. He was also, he had acquired blindness. So he had very sighted kind of mannerisms. And Steve, they thought Steve was, that he was faking being a little person. Because he didn't have the acon like he was an acon. He looked different than what people think a little person looks like. That people are like, oh, this person is confident and they're on the stage. They must not really have a disability. And so they kind of question that because of that. And so that's one thing that I saw a lot.
What they've had to deal with as far as being at a place that doesn't have a ramp, performing in front of a stage as opposed to being on it, and whatnot. And I more or less, I'll see, I've never seen any quit in any of the, and just like Nina said, it's one of these things that if you display a level of confidence, even in the face of like a clear apparent disability, people aren't used to that, and they're definitely not used to people lobbying for themselves and just having basic accommodations. And one of our friends is Jade, and she's got a motorized wheelchair, and I love it when she chews out a place for not having a ramp. So she's got like a double-edged sword. It's like, you better have a ramp or else she's just going to rip on your place and get everybody laughing at your lack of sensitivity to that very thing. So
is because the ADA doesn't really address access as a performer. Like, the theaters will have a certain number of seats and entryways and all those other things that are amazing, but it kind of presumes that we are only going to consume art. It doesn't necessarily factor in that we are going to be on stage. So I think that, subtext awareness that we bring is amazing.
One more question for you guys, and it's kind of a stereotypical question, but I think it's really important to ask. But do you guys have any advice for young disabled individuals who are interested in performing up on stage?
Don't wait until you think you're ready. If you wait until you think you're ready, you're never going to do it. And that's true whether you have a disability or not. As far as from a disability perspective, our stories need to be told, and they need to be told to everyone else in a way that is appealing to them. I think in my very amateur anecdotal research, as far as like what really gets people to the next level of equity or understanding as far as minorities, is having something that appeals to the mainstream. And that's really kind of what starts that cultural conversation, is when you can go not only be something within your community that people look to as entertaining and as meaningful, but when people outside of that can look at you or what you're doing as meaningful and understanding. And I don't know that that people with disabilities have had that. And we've had sparks. Certainly, we've been in the limelight for short periods, but I think that mainstream appeal is something that we still collectively need to get at. And it's not, can't just be one of us. It has to be, a movement of us. So, and that doesn't happen without y'all getting involved. So. and we're happy to help in any way we possibly can.
Yeah, this was a fun interview to do. So yeah, thank you guys.
Hey, thank you, Oaklee.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
See you guys. See you tomorrow.
All right, guys. I'll see you online sometime.